Ms. Bigger, right. Where's my gavel?
No, there is one in the box. There's usually one on the
Oh, never mind. I'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Delaney,
Here.
Perkins,
Here.
Musgrave, Weinbrenner,
Here.
Kinnaman,
Here.
Powers,
Here.
McKinney.
Here. We have a quorum. I'll entertain a motion to excuse Councilperson Musgrave.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Delaney, support by Perkins. Roll call vote, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
Weinbrenner,
Yes.
Delaney,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. First on the agenda is consent agenda. All items under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the village council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda. After consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda. What is the pleasure of council with respect
I'll
to?
make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Powers, support by
Delaney.
Delaney. Thank you. I heard it, I didn't say it. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Weinbrenner,
Yes.
Delaney,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried.
Sorry to see you leave, Angela. Sorry about that, Mr.
Oh,
President.
that's all right. That's all right. We thank you for saying that. We all feel that same way. First on the agenda, public comment. Members of the public can address council once addressed by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes for items not on the agenda. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. For items on the agenda, comments may be made after council discussion, prior to council vote. Prior to addressing council, we ask that members of the public please state their name and address for the record. Anyone wish to be recognized for public comment for matters not on this evening's agenda? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is...
Would you please stand up and come to the podium
Absolutely.
so that we can get your voice on the record? Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Council, my name is Jarrett Hopper. I live at 309 Cogshell Street in the village.
It's all yours.
All right, my 4 minutes have begun. Well, thank you all for your time today. My wife and I have been village residents since July 4th of 2019, after a 13-year stint in the Seattle metropolitan area. While moving back, everyone asked why we chose Holly, and the reasons were simple. Our formative years were spent here. Our relatives are longtime residents. In fact, my grandfather, Morel Butch Bailey, is the longest living veteran in our town, and probably its largest high school wrestling supporter. In the small town, happy, no BS feel of the community. We love living here, and we love seeing what Holly has become. The reason for my approaching you today, however, is to ask for the council's assistance on resolving the reckless behavior of commuters on our street. Over the last 2 years, we've witnessed what should be a normal neighborhood street essentially become the de facto drag strip of Holly. As someone who works from home and has done so for the last 2 years, people easily exceed 50+ miles an hour between the intersections of Sherman and Cogshell past the railroad tracks into the housing development. You can literally hear increased acceleration from the other end of the street along with suspension unloading from their vehicles when passing over the tracks. I've written to Mr. McKinney, the village president, as well as called the Holly Village Police Department to ask for additional enforcement or restrictive devices to resolve these concerns with no resolution. Our street is filled with children and pets that all could become victims of some careless commuter. My neighbors and even Holly residents outside of our neighborhood have witnessed the excessive speeds people travel down our road. Additionally, when I've contacted the Holly Police Department, I'm immediately questioned about where I live on the street, as if beyond the tracks is not their problem. I get that it's Rose Township past the Bealby Junkyard. I would like to ask the Village Council for their consideration of the following measures to help bring these issues to a halt. Increase patrols, including police speed presence at the corner of Cogshell and Fenwick. Possible speed bumps in the middle of the street between Cogshell and Fenwick to deter the speeds, and posted signs that showcase a residential speed zone. As a tax-paying village resident, I'm hoping that these concerns are reviewed and considered. I plan to address the issue with the council again at the October meeting to just see if any progress has been made. Thank you for your consideration and for all that you do for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper. Any other members for council comments? Yes.
Sorry, I looked really excited, like I just couldn't wait to get up here. Sorry. Kristen Watt, 102 South First Street, apartment 3, Holly. I don't know what happened. Anyway, we'll just keep it moving. I have a bunch of things to consolidate into 4 minutes, and I think they're all important. So, first of all, I want to thank our Holly Police Department, Michigan State Police, and all the first responders who addressed the unfortunate situation that happened here last week. Thank you for handling that in a professional way. And unfortunately for the person who passed, that was not a good situation, but I'm so thankful that nobody else was injured. And I really, in times like these, I feel like we all do have our fights and our disagreements, but the fact is the community rallied around this family and just showed what Holly is all about when things of this magnitude happen. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank everyone for their part that they played in resolving that situation. I would like to know, just throw it out there, if there are any updates. I know recently, since the last council meeting, there was more of a specific amount for the American Recoveries Act around, I didn't have it in front of me tonight, I apologize, but it was around the $600,000+. And per the last, one of the last issues on the agenda last month regarding, I'm usually way more prepared. The name of that, Mr. Walker, maybe you can help me. The thing about being in compliance for that y'all mentioned that Katie started and then it's
The RRC.
Mm-hmm.
the RRC. Thank you very much. It's been a long week. Part of that was about community input and getting that up to compliance. And I'd like to hopefully see in the coming months community input into whatever is available for those funds to be spent on, to just be able to have an open dialogue between our community and our local government, so that we are simpatico on what's going to benefit everybody. So I'd love to hear an update on that. The other thing I want to say is, and I'll let Jacob, I'm sure he's going to speak. He wrote an amazing op-ed I read about 10 minutes before I walked in here. And I'm so blessed to live in a community with young people that have this type of care and concern for and intelligence of what this is the future of our community. And I hope he's going to talk tonight about what he wrote about. I want to thank Sherilyn Everly, who's not here tonight, and also Nicole Rankin, who is here tonight. In the consent agenda that was approved for the Holly Women's Memorial event, this has been a 9-month labor of love. It is going to be August 28th at Waterworks Park from 9:45 to 12. We are honoring 74 living women from this community, and it is amazing, not to mention those who have passed on. And thank you for approving that, and thank you so much to both of them who have been influential in getting this project off the ground, as well as many others. Nicole just finished the paper program today. It is absolutely beautiful, and I'm so thankful for her graphic art design and your help. I want to thank you for approving my business registration. I am so excited to join the amazing business owners here in Holly coming this month. And I know Miss Musgrave is not here tonight, if someone could at least inform her for the memorial event. We will be bestowing a plaque to Karen Winchester and to Debbie at least it's for the village and the township to thank the women who have served in elected office, and we would like them to receive those on behalf of the village and the township. If someone could pass that along to her. And I also want to thank the 22 volunteers who came out to Waterworks Park week before last and finished cleaning up the brush line along the Shiawassee River. We plan to go back in October to help along with some of the environmental groups that work with that park to make sure that what we cut down is not growing back and keep it beautiful. And I'm also excited to see, I'm sorry to see Angie go from the Parks Commission, but thank you so much for nominating or appointing Christopher Summers, who is beyond knowledgeable, helpful, and willing to go and do the hard work and the gross work down at these parks, and he's going to be a great addition to our Parks Commission. So I look forward to working with him. I think that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Watt. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Roberta Pashota, and I live at 213 Michigan Street and have for about 8 years now. Some of you know me, some of you do not. I'm a pretty straight shooter. If I think it, it comes out my mouth. And I've got to be honest with you guys here today. This DDA appointment is beginning to look like a whole game of smoke and mirrors. In April or May, we were told Mr. Russell would not be reappointed to the chair. Then at the special meeting, we were told that he could chair until we got somebody, that Tom McKinney had put together, the gentleman from Highly Foods, who I honestly could not pronounce his name if I had to. He was accepted, then he wasn't. Okay, fine. I can understand he hasn't been in the town very long, but this is a successful businessman. He would be a great asset to the DDA. Now, here we are in August, and this isn't even on the agenda. You've got to be kidding me. It's time. If you want Dick on the council, appoint him. If you want Linda, like a lot of other people would like to see, great, appoint her. But it's time to stop with the game. It's time to get it settled. Leaving everyone in limbo is not how it should work. The inaction is speaking volumes to the community. And at this point, leaving us off the agenda again does a great disservice to both the village and the DDA. And that's something most people are not going to forget about when it comes to election time.
Thank you. Further public comment? Yes.
Good evening. Thank you, Council. My name is Tom Hardesty. I am the Director of Emergency Management and Homeland Security for Oakland County. I just wanted to take a couple minutes before you. Emergency management, our role in the county is to help prepare for, plan for disasters, emergencies, and then help coordinate response when that happens. Our office is only a handful of people. We rely on our local partners and local communities, such as the vaccination and testing sites here at Holly, to help us execute that mission. During the pandemic, we've worked to supply literally millions of pieces of personal protective equipment to healthcare workers, first responders, those in the community. And again, we're doing this with a handful of people, meaning we rely on others. And while there are literally hundreds of people that helped with this and helped make this happen, there's always a handful that stand out during every time something happens. And then within that handful, there's always one or two that really are the leaders of that group. And Chief Steve McGee, who did not know I was coming here tonight, has really been that person. We could not have achieved the success that we have in trying to combat the virus without people like Chief McGee, without the support of City Manager Walker and the council that understands that one day you're helping in another community and the next day that community might be helping with you. And his work in helping organize the fire group response, in helping set up a distribution network to get that personal protective equipment in the hands of those workers. Working with the incident management team to set up a field and get a field hospital running efficiently down in Detroit. Then again here just recently with the tornado. His leadership amongst these group is really exemplary, and I really just wanted a chance to say a thank you to him and thank you to you all for allowing him to assist us. And while I know this whole time he never forgets his focus on Holly and the village here and the residents here, and really spends, I think, more than 24 hours a day in public service. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you to
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty.
I have to go thank him.
see you, Steve.
Any other offerings for public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Daniel Wendell. I live at 108 Airport Road, just off of Saginaw Street. With the construction, it's been a headache, but I've lived there for almost a year and a half now. The police department hasn't been very helpful. They did put a radar trailer out there to catch the speeders, who are speeding, but it don't write the tickets. And there's a lot of kids that live on that street. And they all seem to want to congregate at my house, which is on the corner of Bevins and Airport Road. And I am tired of having people speed fly up and down the street left and right. I had to push my son-in-law out of the road yesterday as we were walking on the edge of where we could walk at, where a car would usually be parked at, because somebody was flying down the road and I ain't paying attention and almost hit him. And where I used to live, I didn't take it kindly. I had the news companies out. I'm bringing it to the board before I had the news companies come out. I need something. I would like to have something done. Possibly put a three-way stop at Bevins, crossing the VFW hall, and at Airport and Bevins, so it slows people down right there. I know it's a main thoroughfare, and I know it'd be kind of senseless, but when you've got 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they're kids. They're going to jar it out no matter where they're at or what they're doing. If their ball goes out in the street, their ball goes out in the street, and then somebody who's going to be doing 60 miles an hour on that street, because I've seen it done. I mean, I've had officers at my house when we've had incidents look at my security camera and go, well, that person is definitely speeding. And I would really feel sorry for the person who does hit my child or one of my pets or some other child in the neighborhood, because I will restrain them till the cops get there, and it won't be pleasant. And I'm just saying, we need to have some kind of patrol set up or something set up there. Either we need to have slow children play signs put up in the neighborhood or something like that. There's got to be something in the budget to handle that. Because safety is just, there is no budget for safety. And it's only 25 miles an hour, and I don't see where anybody could go wrong. I mean, anybody, even on the board, I'm sure either you guys got kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, cousins, somebody has got something, and if something happened to one of your kids on the street, look at the Warren mayor. He fell on a sidewalk, and now Warren's replacing all the sidewalks. All it takes is one kid to get hit because somebody decided he wanted to turn Airport into a raceway. And bad publicity left and right and everything else. And Holly's a small town and a close-knit community. And I'd like to keep it that way. I wouldn't want to see it be plastered as, oh, Holly, where you can go drag race and not get in trouble. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any further offerings for public comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jacob Crevier. I live on 507 Ash Street. I just have two things I'd like to discuss today. The first thing is I'm glad to see a lot of progress on the construction on Saginaw Street. It's nice. I mean, I had to go out there and flip a porta potty, and it was starting to look pretty ugly for a bit. But I do have some concerns about some of the roads in and around Lakeside from when traffic was diverted. One of my first jobs, I worked concrete for 5 years seasonally. And we're already having flooding issues at that main curve. And when we diverted traffic off the main road, I saw people hauling fifth wheels. I saw people hauling trailers with bobcats, stuff that the road, I'm pretty sure the road's load is not built for. And I can just tell it's going to become a problem within the next year. We'll get the first freeze, and then it'll thaw, and then it'll start to crumble like Oreo cookie. So I just wanted to bring that up as kind of like a future reference thing. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up today is that Holly water rates have been a problem for everybody for a while. It gets brought up at every one of these meetings. But one thing that doesn't get brought up a lot is solutions to the old bond debt and solutions to incoming projected costs for infrastructure work. And right now, we're on the cusp of something big federally with the bipartisan infrastructure package passing the Senate today and them considering a $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package as well. And odds are one of these packages, at least one, is going to pass. And that's going to mean a lot of funding for Michigan. And that's going to mean a lot of funding for the village of Holly. And I just wanted to kind of drive home the point that for members on the council and for members in the community, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rebuild our infrastructure and knock out this debt, to get rid of the bond payments that we all pay each month. And if we're not on it, if we don't not harass, but politely lead the arms of our, state reps and our federal reps. Holly's a small village. They will miss us in the chaos. There's only 6,000 people in the village, I think, according to the last census. And I just can't drive home enough that we need to act on this. So I posted some stuff online, a contact information sheet for information for anything from the office of the governor to U.S. senators who represent our village, to our state rep, Mike Mueller, to Ruth Johnson, our state senator. And I would just like to reiterate to the public and to the council to, if you know any of these people, if you're in any type of contact with these people, just keep this in mind, because in the next month or two, this money's going to be big, and it can change the lives of a lot of people in Holly, because we have people moving because our water rates are so high. We have people not moving to Holly because our water rates are so high. So, yeah, just wanted to drive that home.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes.
Open my notes here. Trying to be prepared. Joanna Barnes, 3393 Harrington Drive. I have two comments that I want to make. One is about the garbage challenge that we've spoken about a couple of times. It went really well. We had good participation. We did a drawing to award the gift card and continue to address the issues. I personally collect about a bag a day on my rides, but I've noticed that the days that Republic collect, it's a big part of the issue. Garbage flies out of the cans, it gets dumped out, nobody picks it up, it just gets ignored. It ends up all over the streets. I see it in the drain, in the grates, along the sides of the roads. I can't tell you the amount of things that I picked up out of the roads that are a danger that people just don't even realize are there. There are many businesses that have garbage around the perimeter and the easement, landscaping, bushes, that add to the problem. Areas like Thomas Street at the railroad crossing where it's all in the vegetation, places where it's nobody's responsibility. So nothing's getting done. I'm one human, one person, doing my best, trying to recruit. I've got my family recruited in this. I'm getting the moniker of the trash lady. It's okay. The garbage I'm seeing all over Holly makes Holly look like a community that doesn't care about its appearance, though, and we just know that's not true. So, as I said, I'm one person. If the council can do anything to bring public awareness, to help address the factors that are causing the problems, that would really be a good thing. It would be appreciated by myself and I think a lot of other people in the community. I know we're all sick of hearing about the Republic services, but we pay good money for that contract. And spotty service is bad enough, but garbage dropped through our town should be a concern to all of us. My next plan will be to sponsor community action targeted areas, like maybe we'll pick a road. I'm funding this on my own, so when I do gift cards, that comes out of my pocket. But I'm trying to pick an area and say, hey, over the next 2 weeks, let's do Rood Road. Let's do Saginaw Street. Let's do here. As I said, any help that I can get with public awareness with that really helps, because all I have is Facebook and my own mouth, you know? So my other comment regards the DDA position. I know we're all sick of hearing about this too. Mr. Rozell's term expired several months ago, and his name was not put forward for various reasons. Since that time, other very qualified and worthy candidates were suggested, both new to our community with fresh ideas and connections, as well as long-standing members who have learned the heartbeat of our town and earned the respect of so many in Holly. These people have no conflicts of interest and no questions as to their eligibility to their business as related to the DDA, both issues that cannot be said of Mr. Rozell. We've all seen how this has played out so far. Watching and hearing things unfold as they have, it's becoming an increasing concern that the plan is to now either continue to vote down other nominees so Mr. Rozell can retain his seat by default, or only Mr. Rozell will be accepted as a candidate despite valid public concerns and frankly continuing divisive comments of his. When I reached out to President McKinney about my concerns, the sentiment was reflected in his response that the board would not vote for any candidate other than Mr. Rozell in his opinion. I don't understand this mentality. Mr. Rozell may be a fine person who has done great things for this community. I'm sure there's lots of people that like and respect him. But he's also actively making comments regarding controversial topics that are not just divisive. Some are flat out false information and frankly dangerous, coming from a person in leadership. Why is this being ignored? Why are there no repercussions? And why, when I reach out, are my concerns dismissed? Regardless of what any one person in leadership does for a community, it by no means should be a blanket guarantee for continued position in the future, irrespective of their behavior or public concern. Dick Rozell may be a good man. I don't know him personally. I only know him through his work on the DDA and his public comments regarding a number of issues germane to public interest, and those sentiments have left me less than impressed.
Ms. Barnes, any time, your time's up.
All right, okay.
Go ahead and finish. You can finish.
Thank you. I'm almost done. There are so many other people that are just as respected and capable as Mr. Rozell without the divisive rhetoric or questions about business eligibility. I would love to see Holly move forward into the future rather than continue to spend time over this DDA appointment. And I hope next month's meeting is a productive one with a new candidate voted into position. Thank you so much for your time and the extra time. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you. Any further public comment this evening? Yes, Angie.
Thank you. My name is Angela Wallace. I live at 709 Baird Street in Holly here. I'm the mother to 5 children, 3 whom are diverse in their lives. I'm coming to you today because I'm totally appalled and I'm very sickened by the leaders of this village. The homophobic, the racist, and the sexualized views. You represent Holly, not only in name, but in social media as well. Anyone that you appoint must meet the same standards as you do. You are being viewed as having the same morals, the same values as those that you put into office. If you appoint and you keep people who are openly homophobic, racist, and who practice sexual discrimination on boards, we, the public, have no choice but to view you as homophobic, racist, and that you practice sexual discrimination. Social media posts that are put out there by your leadership choices, yes, your choices, show the true feelings that you have regarding African Americans, LGBTIQ persons. You're saying that this is okay to joke, to laugh, to make fun of, and to discriminate against this demographic of persons. Some of you are all up in arms because the school is accepting a resolution and forming a committee to deal with equity and diversity, when in reality, they are having to do this because of people like yourselves who are protecting and promoting this very behavior. Our youth are seeing posts by our downtown leaders who openly discriminate, and you who are leaders are pushing to have this. You are appointing, and you have appointed, and you continue to think about appointing a chairperson because you think it won't be forgotten in November. You can reappoint your friend, the bigot, the sexist, the homophobic, the candidate who wants to represent our downtown. The question is, do we want our downtown to be known as transphobic, homophobic, and racist, and that we promote a sexualized environment? If you do, by then all means appoint Mr. Rozelle and let the public know that this is what you want, but we will remember it in November. When you are being voted out or in, we will remember. Please consider Mr. Vashif or Ms. Stouffer. This is not rocket science. You as lawyers, Chamber of Commerce directors, teachers, police officers, handyman, painters, retirees, accountants, you can figure this out. We all have. So it's time that you figure it out. We do not want Mr. Rozelle in office, and I'm asking you to appoint anybody but him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Hearing none, seeing none, we will close public comment. And next on the agenda is a presentation update on the state of the Michigan cannabis industry. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Justin Danaskis, and I'm with Danaskis Consulting and Development. We're a multi-client lobbying and government affairs consulting organization, and we do work at the federal, state, and local level. And this is David Cipriano with my office. He'll be handing out a couple hard copies of the presentation we'll be giving out this evening. And we represent a wide host of clients from multinational corporations, mom and pops, trade associations, coalitions, as well as work with a number of local units of government and other government agencies. We're multi-client. And we've been working, in particular in the cannabis space, one of the sectors our firm focuses on, for about the last 10 years. And so it's kind of from this unique perspective in the sense that, we do work for, again, the private industry and nonprofits as well as the government entities. That kind of bringing you tonight kind of update on the commercial side of cannabis, what it means for different communities, good, bad, and different, and really kind of give a foundation of the commercial side, again, of cannabis as it relates to the medical as well as the adult use acts. So there's hopefully a fundamental kind of understanding of what these acts do and don't do, and then some updated concrete examples of kind of what's happening in and around Holly. So with that, hopefully you'll get a good education day and kind of rounding what's happening, maybe some next steps for the community and other things, as well as hopefully demystify some things, as well as through the chair of the president, I'll stick around for questions, Q&A as well. So with that, we're first going to start out, and again, because I'm going to focus on the commercial side, kind of back in 2016. So that was 8 years after, if you recall, the 2008 original public act that was passed by the voters that set up for the commercial side of the cannabis sector. And so 8 years after, it was really left up to the locals and courts to kind of come up with a solution for the commercial side. We finally got a package of bills passed that enabled for basically 5 types of licenses. And a little later on, I'll kind of go into them a little more detail, but just so we understand kind of the main 5 license types, we have the grower, which is the cultivator who cultivates the cannabis. You also have a processor license, which does extraction and manufacturing of that biomass or that plant. You also have your safety compliance facilities. That's your independent labs that do the testing and so forth. And then we also have a secure transporter, which was thought of to actually move the currency as well as products between the B2B, not direct to consumer, but between the licensees. And then the last one under the medical, they call them provisioning centers, which was your pharmacy, your endpoint of distribution to your patients. And right after we kind of got this act rolling, as you're aware, in 2018, the voters passed pretty resoundingly, like they did in 2008, for the adult use side of the equation under the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. The MRTMA is the acronym there. And so the drafters of that mimicked a lot of what was in the medical. So you'll see, they have the identical license types that I had just mentioned of the 5, as well as it allowed for some new license types and opportunities. And again, I'll go into each of these in a little more detail, but so you can kind of get a flavor of the license types. There's a micro business, which is more of kind of micro brewery, where someone can grow, process, and sell the product right on site. They also saw a need for some larger grows. They call an excess grow license. Kind of think 50,000 square feet or above for those larger ones. And then it also allows for a marijuana event organizer. Kind of think party planner, event planner. Those are the ones that would get the license and do all the standard operating procedures for the events. And or then they would actually have a temporary marijuana event. If you think about, Lions Clubs and Knights Columbus, a member of those organizations, we do beer tents a lot, right? Mark my words, won't be too far off. Well, there would be temporary marijuana events with different fraternal orders and nonprofits. And then there's also more established businesses called designated consumption lounges, which are then a year-round permitted sanctioned facility should a municipality allow it. So what these two acts again did is really set up for what could the commercial side be, what license types are there, and also really set up for what's allowed for or not. Because in 2018, the voters did pass, as everyone's pretty much aware of now, right, those that are 21 and up to consume cannabis. And it also allows them to grow 12 plants per dwelling. So any home in the village of Holly can grow 12 plants if there's anyone that's 21 and up there. There's also the caregiver side of it. We won't kind of get into that side, but could be up to 72 plants with the patient caregiver side of the equation too in residential settings, though now there is some more options, fortunately, for local municipalities to zone for those, regulate those, and so forth. But under the 12 plants, specifically under the adult use, there's not a lot to do to restrict those 12 plants at any home. And so these two acts, very similar to a lot of our other regulated industries in Michigan, have a lot of oversight, regulation, and bureaucracy that oversees them. So both of these sites are regulated under LARA, which is our Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Department here in the state of Michigan, and they oversee everything from barber shops, repair shops, hundreds of licenses. And so within that you have your Marijuana Regulatory Agency, and so there's a agency just for this industry that sets rules, regulations, and so forth. So it's not locals that have to sweat the details. I'll talk about in a minute with regards to who controls these entities. In Great, they're going to set up rules, but who's going to enforce it? So obviously, they've set up different enforcement divisions. So you have the actual Michigan State Police, which is tasked and has folks assigned to do various investigations and police enforcement for these different facilities, again, on the commercial side. And then we also have an enforcement division within the MRA. So think similar to other regulated industries for tips, if you will, reporting employee discrepancies, and so forth. There's a whole enforcement division that goes, checks on these things, random inspections, kind of if you think about with alcohol for underage sales, testing folks, make sure they're, not selling to underage or what have you. And then the Bureau of Fire and Safety oversees each project and looks at all the plans for health, safety, fire matters. In addition to, obviously, locals, as much as they want to be involved with any of their departments, they may. But really, just like locals and the village of Holly doesn't really have to worry about too much about the dry cleaners doing with their chemicals, or the repair shop is putting the brakes on right. These things can be very detrimental if they're not done right or oversight, but it's not really a local municipality's job or need to go in and do this sort of enforcement inspection. Though at any time, law enforcement officials can go into these facilities at any time. And so specifically, just so you get a little more handle on what they're actually regulating and setting rules for, it's everything from their operating procedures. So you don't have to worry about, okay, are they checking IDs correctly, or do they have the right amount of cameras? The state restricts and sets all these matters up with very detailed rules. Some may be surprised to know on the security side of it, in a small retail establishment that's maybe 2,000 square feet, it's not uncommon to have 30 cameras just in that 2,000 square foot area. They have cameras for every inch inside and out, and that data is stored for 30 days. They also have various standards for your marketing and advertising, so you don't have to worry about maybe caricatures or something that may be inappropriate to certain audiences. That's all regulated by the state, as well as, of course, locals. You obviously have your power of your signed ordinances and your own, but kind of gone are the days of the green crosses and so forth. These facilities, especially on the retail front, are more of a bank, credit union, or a Starbucks look to them. And again, the state, unlike you may have seen in the past, has regulations now on these commercial facilities, as well as daily purchasing limits and tracking of the product. Because one of the other big components that was set up under both of these acts for medical and adult use is the Marijuana Tracking Act. So it's a very unique component of this entire industry in the sense that all the licensees and consumers for that point really interface with this, and it's a live 24/7, 365 days a year live system that tracks everything from the very beginning when a plant is being grown, it's tagged, all the way to harvest, post-harvest, sale. So if there's ever a recall, very easy to track it right down to who bought it, at what store, and how to get it back. As well as should some of the product get diverted or end up in the wrong hands, if you just take that barcode and this tracking, they can say, well, this product was sold at 2:05 in the afternoon on Friday to Mr. Bob Smith, and he also bought 2 pre-rolls, and here's him on camera, and that's where it was purchased. And so if it's now 4 o'clock on Friday, you may be able to connect the dots on where the person got the product from, right? So very detailed on tracking this product, as well as it's also interfaced with accounting. There's annual reports, so the dollars are tracked, as well as the transactions too. So everything is very open in a sense to the state that they have all this data. Not to other competitors, but certainly to the state, and then also little rest assured locally that unlike any other product really you find in other stores to have this sort of detailed tracking mechanism on it. And so what do these facilities really look like? What do they mean? We've all kind of heard of them now, or at least you heard my listing of them and so forth. But on the commercial side, what does a grow facility really look like? Most of the time, these facilities are very high-tech commercial agricultural buildings. They're using supplemental lighting, in most cases pure indoor growing. They like to kind of create the perfect day inside to produce the plants. And so on average, we're now seeing, you'll see on there $50 to $100 a square foot. It's closer to $200 a square foot is the price that the operators will pay just to outfit their facilities with lighting, irrigation, HVAC, and all the pieces they'll need for a high-tech indoor grow facility. And you'll see by some of the hourly wages and things down there, that's the very low end of the scale. Right now, an average cultivator, the head cultivator is making about $150,000 a year in the state of Michigan. And the other nice thing is there are a number of entry-level career path jobs. There's a number of caregivers and people in the industry that are transitioning to the commercial side. However, there is a great demand for this industry, and the good news is there's a lot of career paths. There's a lot of science and advanced technology that go through where you may start off literally being more of, on the cleaning side of it. There's a lot of cleaning that's going involved with the operations, to the trimming, and then getting all the way down into the sciences of tissue cultures and so forth. And on average, these facilities could have 20 people, and they could go as large as over 100,000 square feet, running 3 shifts, employing hundreds of people. Should a municipality have a space for that, or a village, so, maybe not appropriate here, but they can get very large as well, potentially. And then there's also the processing facility. These facilities could be smaller in scale, of a couple thousand square feet to over 10,000 square feet. A lot of times they'll accompany one of the grow facilities. And these have high-end extraction equipment in them that takes your initial, they call it biomass or the flour, and processes it down to the various infused products and medicines that people are trending more and more to. So there's still a lot of flour that's combusted and smoked. It's still the #1 category, but we see every month over month more of the edibles, the tinctures that may be droplets, the rubs, beverages. There's a lot of large and small companies betting big on beverages being a big consumption tool. And so it all comes through a processing license that will make the non-smokable products in all the forms and fashions. And again, you have different bioscience people in there. The low end is about $50,000 if you're a processor, to over $100,000 they'll pay, depending on the size of the facility. And they're attracting, folks of all ages. A lot of people transitioning from tool and die. It's a little more exciting. So you're getting a lot of second, third generation, or career rather, folks transitioning over that we're seeing a lot of as well, is along a younger demographic as well as transitioning towards this industry. And then you have the provisioning center or the marijuana retailer. That's the endpoint delivery to the consumers. And again, these facilities, I would really call them a cross between a credit union and a Starbucks now, is kind of the image, if I could paint a picture for them. Very common for them to spend $100 plus $200 a square foot outfitting these facilities to make them very welcoming, unique, inviting. And you may be surprised if you go in there, about the average census age of a consumer is actually about 46, they find. So it's not, 20 to 30-year-olds. They're certainly shopping there too. But, I can mention some communities, we can show the demographics. It's actually a lot of baby boomers and others coming back to the product now that there's access and going away from the black market, and the other transactions are coming back to it. And these facilities are typically smaller, right, from about 1,000, 1,500 square feet on the small end to about 5,000 square feet. Curbside delivery, since the pandemic, has been more popular as well, and as well as there's now home delivery. So everything is still tracked seed to sale and verified even on the to the home delivery. And these facilities, on average will employ at least 25 people. If there's a lot of times there's someone at the front for check-ins, as well as managers, bud tenders, parking lot attendants, you name it. So it takes quite a bit of folks to run this retail operation, as well as they want to make sure they're educating patients and giving time to each person. So pretty heavily staffed for a typical retail facility. In these first three license types may all what's called be vertically integrated, which is becoming more and more popular. So the state allows it, and should the locals allow it, someone could grow, process, and do the retail right at one site. And so, like a car dealership, right? You're going to buy a car there, you may get service there, some, tires, RV places. There's a lot of different retail or applications you think of kind of that seed to sale model. Plus, a lot of communities are attracted by those type of arrangements because you're bringing kind of the whole suite of jobs, as well as a very stable business in the sense that they have all three components at one site. And there's also very important safety compliance facilities, which are high-tech laboratory outfits that actually test the product for potency, mold, mites, chemical residues, metals, and so forth. So all the product is tested rigorously. It's all quarantined till it passes before it could ever reach a consumer. And not to beat up on folks that may caregive or so forth, but obviously all the IDs are checked, the product is tested, there's recalls, and so the safety compliance is an independent operation that obviously couldn't have any interest or ownership in any other license type. They're just in the laboratory space to be third party. And on average, on a small outfit, you'd have 6 to 10 people at the lab, and most of them are scaling now to about 50, 60 employees to keep up with demand. And very high-tech equipment, very similar to any other lab. These pieces of equipment are just trained for whatever material you're testing. So it's not anything special, just very expensive equipment that they then train for the specific industry. Then we also have the secure transporter, so no longer employees or others, moving around large amounts of this product or currency. A third-party secure transporter is moving the product and currency between the businesses. And very nonchalant, you see the kind of Sprinter van there. It's not like you may see in some other states where they have the armored vehicle. It's kind of "weed are us," armored car. Nah, not the best. So nonchalant. We actually mimic this one more off the pharmaceutical industry. If you think of your local pharmacy or even some of the nationals, you don't realize when they're getting all these little pills that are worth tons of money on the black market, what have you. It's coming in boxes, nonchalant, just like it's coming through the mail. So everything is very secured, tracked. There's logs, travel routes, and so forth. So it's basically, to the common person, they think they're getting some stationery or something when these products are coming or going. And that is also a third party. If you're in this business, you can't be in any of the others if you're moving it. And then some of the newer license types, we have the micro business. And so this, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of more like a microbrewery is what it was mirrored after. And so this is unique under one license type. Someone can grow up to 150 plants, process it, and then sell it all at one facility. Now it's capped at that 150 mark versus the higher plant count in some of the others, but it's kind of a starter package or microbrewery, so to speak, for folks to get into the industry, try those different license types all under one fee, one model, and then again kind of offer that seed to sale microbrewery type of experience or product at these types of facilities. So kind of think a little smaller batch craft in a sense for those. They're coming more and more popular in cities and villages as well as rural communities that may not support a full dispensary and or to help a lot of more local operators geared towards the micro businesses. And then now there's also designated consumption lounges. So the state made a big leap this year, and now they actually allow food and beverage. Should the county, and you get your approvals obviously through the health department and so forth for food and beverage, you can now have food and beverage at these facilities as well. And so actual place for those 21 up to come and consume the product. The product would be delivered there through from a marijuana retailer, or folks would bring their own. So a lot of times these will accompany a micro business and or a marijuana retailer, so they can kind of sell their product and give their patrons a place to consume it. But now with the food and beverage, it's more of a business model to stand on its own as well. And so that, unlike the marijuana event or others, is a permanent place that's obviously regulated locally on hours and so forth. But the state has very rigorous requirements, just like for bars, for overconsumption and so forth. But there's actually a designated place now for the consumption. And then you have the marijuana event organizer. They could pretty much locate anywhere because, again, they just hold the license to say, okay, I'm going to play by the rules. I'm going to have the insurance, the standard operating procedures to hold the events. And then the municipality has to actually have an ordinance sanction for a temporary marijuana event. And again, kind of like the beer tent analogy, there's a process for that to take place. So there could be temporary sales somewhere of marijuana, again, similar to a beer tent. And you can see on there it's temporary. It can only be for a single day, not more up to 7 days consecutive. So it could be for maybe a festival or something going on. So you can have it for multiple days, but they don't want it a permanent, semi-permanent type of event. And then with these different products that are offered out there, they are all taxed. On the adult use side, there's a 10% excise tax placed on all the products, as well as a 6% sales tax. As you would assume, the state sales tax gets divvied up like all their sales tax. But the 10%, as you'll see on here, is broken up in three buckets. In a sense, you can see four there, but locals, and they county and municipals. So the municipalities that allow the marijuana retail stores or micro businesses are the only ones that get to share in the state excise tax revenue. And then also the counties where those are located, they get 15% of the take. And then you can see 35% is going to the schools through the aid fund, and then as well as a 35% to the Department of Transportation. And so last 2 years we had a little less revenue because $40 million of the initial revenues from the excise tax were placed into a separate fund to support grants and programs for research for cannabis and veterans. And so that's actually going to be awarded here very soon in the coming months. The RFP process has been out and the winners will be selected soon. So there was $40 million taken off the top the first 2 years. So the revenues were a little lower than expected. It came out to $28,000 per facility that year, last year, fiscal year. And so we have all these different license types and facilities, and you've seen them start to pop up in other communities, but good, bad, and different, what do they really do? What can you do with these, facilities or not? Or are they bad or are they great? What we've seen in working for both municipalities and private industry and nonprofits, what we've seen is done right, they can bring a lot of great opportunity and things to a community. And by doing things, because you're in essentially control right now, versus by way of a referendum or someone else saying how and where they want it, local municipalities have the right, just like on most ordinances, to say, I want this license type and this zoning and this many of them, and this is how we're going to select them. And so you can target which license types you want, how and where you want them. And so you can have things in there, which a lot of communities have, is different pieces too, to kind of guide the applicants to what you want. So what kind of community outreach do you want out of it? Do you want to entice new builds or take out blight? Or do we want, a vertically integrated operation? Do we want the labs? You can select and choose which ones you want, and then by gearing them towards the different areas or your criteria, get the type of operation where and how you want them. And so as we look at some of the different things it brings, I share the revenue only to share the revenue. I don't say, they're going to bring you all this money and revenue and so forth. There are a number of success stories and a lot of money that they do bring. Each municipality charges $5,000 annually for each facility type, as well as a lot of them will charge a $500 location or $5,000 location opportunity. So it's $10,000 per site. Let's see, a couple stats are up there. Pontiac, just on their application fees, collected, I think, $500,000. If we look at Orion Township, they have a number of large grow facilities, and now we're looking at the retail side. They tout that helped pay for their new township hall, because these larger grower facilities, they may stack 10 Class C licenses. So that you can get $100,000 just off flat $5,000 fees annually. So those are hard actual fees; those don't fluctuate, right? And then there's also, excise tax revenue. As I told you, the first year when they took $40 million off the top, it still resulted in $28,000 per marijuana retail and/or micro business in the community. Obviously, you charge all your other local permit fees, inspection fees, site plan review, so all those fees, stay in place, of course. And then obviously these facilities, which we'll talk about a little more and what they've meant to other communities, obviously are putting a lot of investment, as I shared earlier, into these. So the property tax, real and personal, as well as the economic development around it, is more really where we see a lot of opportunity. So what the industry does bring, because there is a lot of interest and demand for it by the citizens as well as the private industry, when geared towards it, they can do a lot of economic development as well as stabilization in the area. And I can give you countless examples. I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 real quick. Davison, real close by community, they targeted through a process to develop a piece of property that's long been vacant, a little blighted, just south of Kroger on their main drag. And now they've attracted and awarded the license, and this month there will be site plan approval for a brand new development right on Saginaw on a long kind of delinquent piece of property. If we look at, let's see, a larger one, Pontiac, there was a 30-acre site or 28-acre site. There was a former Kmart and Farmer Jack Anchor Shopping Center. Robust, big, great site 40 years ago. Been pretty vacant and desolate the last 20, 30 years. But by taking some look and understanding, they were able to do a mixed use there where there's grow, process, retail, as well as other traditional users. And the first fresh grocery coming to the city in, I think, 10 years, Hollywood Market is reinvesting and doing a new build grocery there. In the village of Orion, they allowed for 2 retail facilities. One of them is going on a site that probably needed to develop about 50 years ago. Some of you may recognize it. We call it the Cabin site on M24. It's on the west side of Lapeer, if you can envision the Starbucks, and then our nice war memorial. Then we have a fruit place, and then these old cabins and a bunch of rentals that are certainly could use some TLC. And so 50 years, no one's been able to come in there because it's kind of an assemblage and so forth. It takes industry and things like this to spark those pieces of property. And if you gear towards where you want it, then you can get the outcomes you desire. And it's not the exact opposite. Everyone thinks, oh, well, no one's going to want to live there, have a business. They have all of those, and they want it all right there. There's going to be residential home components behind it. There's going to be mixed-use retail next to it and a freestanding retail center, and as well as kind of redevelop the blight and tired section there. And so I can go on and on because most municipalities that opt in and move forward on their own without being prompted by different actions, you can get the most out of it by directing it how and where you want it to get the best outcomes. As well as there's, of course, the free market approach as well. And you can see lots of redevelopment and opportunities, and we can give you examples of those municipalities. But it also spreads. So it's not just, on that site, it's surrounding there and so forth. Here's just a quick example. One of our clients was working on a site in Grand Rapids. And so initially they had found a long vacant storefront that fit the requirements that the city wanted redeveloped. And as they started talking with the neighbors and surveying with their plans for it, they quickly found out the 2 adjacent property owners said, well, we want to be part of this. And now it spawned to a whole city block redevelopment of mixed use, of residential as well as retail. And so it's really, folks used to think these things make everything, property values go down, and it's the exact opposite. If you take cannabis out of it, what makes property values go down are blight, are vacant pieces of property, our vacant storefronts, our dilapidated properties. What brings property values up are new buildings, our rehabilitated buildings, our kept up buildings, our buildings that have tenants that have money and are appreciative to be in the community, that don't have a stick of gum or trash on their site because, they're engaged, they're appreciative to be there. And then the economic development as well as community spinoff. On average, unprovoked, there's about $50,000 of direct reinvestment into the community in the way of grants and not economic development, rather community re-engagement that the retailers bring because they're part of the community. They want to be a part of it. And so study after study has shown, as well as we can just look at, we go up, the corridor of 75 to these communities that have opted in, all the property values, residential, commercial, industrial, in these opted in communities have only increased. And so, again, with new development, basically just take cannabis out of it, right? It's, it's allowed now and every home can grow it. There's no, putting Pandora back in the box. So by harnessing it, directing it where you want, you're getting the desired effects. And of course, as I mentioned, there is, quite a bit of demand and interest from this industry, right? As well as the citizens, right? With the, over 63% right here in the village, as well as the state voting in support of it. Certainly they rather have the transactions done, regulated and so forth, I believe, than, the home grows and things in the, neighborhoods and so forth. And so I know I blabbled and thrown a lot at you, and that was kind of the goal today, limited time, and wanted to paint a broad brush of, again, hopefully what you can demystify what the industry is or isn't, what these facilities have done in a couple communities around you. We can give you, countless examples of that, as well as, what we've seen done when unchecked in areas like Bay City, or when there's referendums to force places where they want it. You get some unintended consequences like oversaturation in Bay City to a degree. Just like any municipality, I live in Lake Orion. We had too many hair salons downtown forever. Not that I went to them much, but you need diversity in any license type. So I'm not here to advocate, make all your commercial open to cannabis. No, because they'll probably get eaten up by it. they'll come, they'll find it, they'll keep coming. But by directing it how and where you want it before others do and so forth, we've seen become a great tool and very welcomed. And as you start going to these other communities, no one thinks Orion's the pot mega, or Flint Township's moving forward with an ordinance, or Davison, another new great facility. And most people forget that they don't even know they're there unless you stop and think about it, because long are the days gone of green crosses, signs, and so forth. Most places now are found on Weed Maps, LeafLink on your phone, just like when you're looking for restaurants, other things. These are destination based. They're not putting out flags and the wavy person flyer thing waving around and so forth. So with that, we'd love to be a resource for you and encourage you to be proactive. The citizens of Roselle only spoke and so forth, and encourage you to look at options in ordinance to hopefully gear the industry and spend the license type to benefit the village. So appreciate it, and through the chair, the president, I'll stick around if you want me to for questions or
Thank you,
whatever your
Justice.
pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Any council members have any questions for Mr. Danaskis?
I think he was very thorough.
Excellent.
My question would have been about the shared revenues, but he covered that.
No questions, only a comment, right?
Okay.
I got a question.
Sure.
Chief Narsh, have you guys had any problems there in Lake Orion with this?
It's not open yet, but based on the analysis done at that time, we don't anticipate no.
Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Danaskis, our guest?
Yeah, I guess I have a question. How do you regulate the purity of this cannabis? What scares me a little bit is this is going to be open to anybody producing their cannabis, producing anything that they pretty much want, with no regulation from anybody other than the police.
Well, actually, so first we have the safety compliance facility. So they test it all for purity, potency, mold, mites, all those pieces. And the state's the one that sets all those standards. And then there's the enforcement division. So things are never allowed to enter the system until they pass testing. And then the state sets the testing standards.
It still makes me fearful of the black market that will be created by the openness of the cannabis. Being able to buy
here.
It's already here, and that's alarming in itself. But once we start having it as open as what you're talking about, I'm just afraid that there's more of these black market growers will get into the market.
Well, please answer Mr. Powers' question, but as a matter of fact, the black market is here. It's substantially more is sold through the black market now.
Yeah.
And the government's going to take control.
Exactly. The Anderson Economic Group recently was commissioned to do a report just on this, the black market and the effects of Michigan. And so they pegged the number at 70% of sales are in the black market. So if you think putting a regulated spot where they check ID, there's tax and access, that the illegal folks and the underage are going to go there or try to do a hey you, versus a guy that doesn't check ID, can put whatever he wants in the plants, advertise how and where he wants. What we've seen and what that independent report said is the way to squash the black market, if you look at the end of alcohol prohibition, is access, right? Right now, you're going to have to drive up to Flint, over to Lapeer, wait till Davison opens up, wait till Orion opens up, and and all the people here are still consuming it, getting it. And so until you get access, controlled access to the right product, people are still going to get their product. And so that's what we're seeing with the reports. It actually does the exact opposite to try to get it out of the homes. We see that, again, it's not, why do I got to call and wait for Harry to get off work if I can just go, to the local store?
Historic issue, Prohibition was 1933. No, I don't remember it. Really. But I do remember in 1970, the Holly Herald had a front page article where they busted somebody who had a still. So it took a while before.
Well, I don't know if any of y'all remember, the 1979 October edition of High Times
I
magazine.
heard that, yeah.
Holly was the pot capital of the
Yeah.
Midwest.
Ah.
Right on the front of the magazine, Holly, Michigan.
I missed that.
Right.
So you're saying
I've
it's,
gone to 2 facilities up on Dordt Highway.
Okay. Yeah.
I couldn't believe how professional they were. I mean, everything was they ID'd before you could get in the door, and I was very surprised because I was the deciding vote years ago that stopped this, and it really changed my attitude.
Yeah. And that's hope, demystify it, right? I chair my local planning commission, Orion Township. I'm a Knights of Columbus, as I mentioned. I have kids in the schools, I can honestly say, and I work for governments as well, when directed the right way, you're not getting many bad actors or anything else in this. When left unchecked is where we see more of the problems. When they say, I want to put it here, and it doesn't really fit there, and they do a referendum, or municipality kind of throws up their arms and goes maybe too free market or something like that, and it can overtake certain areas. But we've been through this for quite a while now, and so you won't have to take my word for it. Well, there's a lot of different councilmen and women out there that have been through it before, as well as other folks. So, we've been around, so now is the time to hopefully, kind
I
of.
think that was part of the problem back when we were discussing this years ago.
Yeah.
Was that we didn't have everything wasn't tightened up yet.
Mm-hmm.
There was still too many
Right.
unknowns.
Yeah.
Even when they passed the legalization, there had to be rules written, administrative
We
rules
hadn't,
written.
we hadn't gotten to that point.
Yeah.
We had not gotten to that point, and there's been some learning, there's been some lawsuits
Yep.
that have cleaned up the process. As a result of the lawsuits, the
Yeah.
process has been
Mhm.
cleaned up.
Yeah.
So it's been a learning curve.
Oh,
for
I
sure,
agree.
yeah.
And like I said, I was really shocked.
Yeah.
It was an eye-opening experience.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments for Mr. Danaskas?
Can the audience ask any questions?
I beg your pardon?
Can the audience ask a question?
You know what, I think I'm gonna permit that, yes, it's part of the agenda, so,
I was just gonna ask the gentleman if he was representing anybody that had interest in bringing a facility into Holly.
Great question. I meant to disclose that up front. We will represent a host of clients, and certainly they'd love to.
Because we've had a couple of moves in town with retail businesses being moved out, and that seems kind of like anticipation of something, because in the middle of the COVID thing, it was kind of odd to see a jewelry store basically be told to leave and move, and I'm just kind of curious if we've already had the ball rolling here, because, and I'll just make this statement since we no longer have public comment at the end, regardless of what the issue is here, cannabis or whatever, I'd like to see this not done the old Holly way, above boards. I'd like to see it clearly done. And kind of interesting, I've never heard any of you members of the council bring up that you want this question brought up. It came from Mr. Walker. I'd like to see a little bit more leadership in our council and state this is something we're interested in talking about. Thank you.
thank you. Any further questions?
I just have one.
Kristen?
Yeah, I'm pretty educated on this whole process anyway, so I'm glad to actually see this, whether you are for or against, or you have preconceived or old notions or archaic views on this. The fact that we are even having this dialogue right now is progress, because as he said, and to, Mr. Powers and I have personally had conversations about this very topic as my council person. As always, people have been doing this forever, like it's gonna happen, but I am a medical patient. I have been able to get off opioids and narcotics because of this, and most of you know my medical stuff. We've been friends for a long time. This has changed my life. I go through from the time of hospital, or not hospital, but the doctor, to the licensing, to the facility with which I am able to be prescribed is literally cleaner and fancier than some of the establishments in our own community. It is so not the old days of just, Cheech and Chong or whatever, and I think that, seriously, and I wasn't even around for Cheech and Chong, my dad was. But my point is, we can maintain our historical preservation, we can maintain the dignity of our community, and we can still evolve with the times, and we can't afford to fix our parks. We need money. And if this is a way for us to do these things and these little, not just parks, but anything, to better our community financially and help, there's so many 60%, you had your numbers right on who voted to pass this stuff. So I think that having a community dialogue, a poll, put it on the ballot, whatever you think needs to happen, we need to have an actual I think our community needs to make this decision for our representatives, which Mr. Perkins, you and I have a lot of differences. We got common ground possibly on this one. And that's what I always talk about. How can we work together to help everyone? And if you're not into pot, don't smoke it. Go home, whatever. Everybody goes to the Blackthorn and get drunk. I don't do that. But if medical people or anyone chooses to do this, I think it's a great, any possible license. It doesn't have to necessarily be a dispensary. But I think this is a great conversation to be at least be having. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kristen. Mr. Hopper, you had your hands raised?
Yes, thank you. My question is, and this is kind of put forth as I have a lot of friends on like the Fenton Planning Commissions and Linden City Council and so forth. Why Holly?
Why not?
Oh, no, and I hear that. But I'm saying is like, from everything that I've heard, and maybe this is why I'm putting this forth, is Fenton's bringing everything in to Fenton, right? But from what I've heard is Fenton is denying this. And if that's, my reason for asking that is like, they've been growing exponentially over the last few years. So what was it, basically, that they were like, no, and you're coming here?
Well, Fenton specifically, so they originally passed an ordinance and they tried to basically zone to Oblivion. And so there's two little parcels and they gave permits, but they didn't really give them to them. So that was the old guard, and that's what they played for a very long time. And then my memory serves me correctly, some of the elected members run various not drug task force, but rather community, law enforcement. So different perspectives or history, I guess, I think was part of the discussion. And once they thought they kind of put to rest with the two little spots out there, but they kind of thought, oh, we addressed it, we allowed it, see, but really they didn't. And then it was been brought forward to add more and just, I don't know, maybe they didn't put the right ask in or changed a mind or two, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, in the back row?
You can let her go first. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, Nicole.
Yeah, so I work for the Village of Oxford. Our marijuana ordinance just passed on Monday. We've had 6 retail applications and 1 grow facility application in a week. And so that's $5,000 just for the permitting process. So that's what, $30,000 in 7 days. And also the other comment that I'd like to make is it was probably a year-long process, watching the council go through the whole entire ordinance. We extended a sunset clause at least 3 times to ensure that all of the community's questions were answered. We have an all-female village council, and I think that they have done a phenomenal job reaching out to the community. And the size of Oxford is very comparable to Holly. And if anybody has questions on council, I know that our village manager in Oxford would be happy, or any of our village council members, to discuss what their experience was in regards to the process.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Sir, in the back row?
I have some questions for the gentleman who gave the, I guess you could say, the consultation. What's your name, sir?
Justin Danaskis.
Justin Danaskis. Is your father Matt Danaskis, the former Republican state senator?
Yeah.
All right. I have some concerns with what you get out of this, because this is the first I've heard about any of this. And having somebody, your father, while he was in office, was tough on crime.
I served on energy and tech and some other ones.
I looked up his policies as I was sitting here. I looked up his record on a nonpartisan website for a quiz that he filled out back in '98. And I find it kind of hard to trust the word of a consulting firm that is more than likely going to make some type of money out of this, when I would much rather see, if the village is going to build a business or a dispensary like this, I would rather see the village do it themselves. Because I have friends whose lives have been ruined from minor drug charges, who can't get financial aid, who've done prison time. I grew up on the north side of Pontiac during the recession. I'm a little older than I look. And their lives are completely different from mine. And hearing the words words of a lobbying firm, like you described yourself, founded by somebody who more than likely was tough against that type of crime back in the day, I find the hypocrisy concerning. And I don't like the fact that there's this kind of shady group that's going to be making money off of businesses set up in Holly that might not even be set up by people who live in Holly or who work in Holly. So my only message to the council is if we're gonna set up a dispensary, let's do it ourselves.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, well, yes, sir.
I had a question because I'm also a medical patient myself, and I was wanting to know since you're involved with the whole state and the villages, what are you guys doing for more ratio effect, like for THC CBD ratio effects? Because I've noticed that is also it's been really helping people as well, such as myself.
Yeah, so the good news is at the state level, we're pushing for more standards on that side of it. Everyone just kind of looks at THC content right now. Can it blow your lid, as we were chatting earlier? Versus there's over 160 cannabinoids within the plant. And so isolating these different ones, let alone CBD with the anti-inflammatory and other components it has, we're really excited about the future and what it's going to bring to say, okay, this strand with this much CBD, CBN, CBG is great for sleep, or restless leg syndrome, or this. And so to be open and honest with you, it's more going to be the private industry that's going to drive that, though, is we're pushing more at the state, but private industry normally moves a little faster into market demands. So I think it's going to take a little while, unfortunately, but we are seeing some of the more attuned operators pick into that market and start selling more 1-to-1s, 1-to-10s, 2-in-1s, and so forth. So, but honestly, with the state, it's probably going to be another rule set, which is another year. They just released this one, so. Yeah.
I've used the ratios for a year and a half now.
Right.
And I think, for a, especially for a place that, like Holly that, is open to that could be possibly open to a Virginia Center, those are good things and those are things that I'm sure everyone else would like to know about.
Right, certainly, yeah.
Thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Danaskis.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
There's no old business. New business. Item number 1, consideration of the approval of council action request to purchase 2 2022 F-250 pickup trucks. Brian, is Brian going to present this? Mr. Clausen, I should say.
This isn't going to be exciting as the last presentation, but I'll try.
And just as a side note, he's on his way to conference as soon as he's done here.
Yeah. So, in the budget process, it was requested and approved to purchase 2 new pickup trucks. They're going to be replacing a 13 and a 15-year-old pickup truck that are used on a daily basis for a variety of tasks. We used Varsity Ford out of Ann Arbor in the past for state bid pricing. I did try to get some pricing from 2 of the local Ford dealerships, one in Fenton, one in here in Holly. And because of COVID and the chip situation, they didn't really present a good bid. So the guy presented me with a bid for, the trucks are $32,200 each. If you were to buy those retail, you're looking at probably over twice that for the same type of pickup truck. And so my recommendation is to purchase this as soon as possible because there is a 30-week wait time for these trucks. So we're looking at probably the end of the year before we even see these trucks. So,
any questions of Mr. Clausen?
No, I know there's a need. What do we do with the old ones, Brian?
One may be cycled back into for building official, or the other one will go through the bid process like we did the other vehicles.
Oh, okay. The staff recommendation is purchase of 2 2022 F-250 pickup trucks from Varsity Ford for $64,400. Motion would be in order.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we accept the purchase of the 2 vehicles at $32,000 each.
Motion by Perkins, support by Weinbrenner. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Delaney.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Weinbrenner.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Clausen.
I guess I get to stay up here because I'm.
Item number 2 on new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to retain Dixon Engineering to inspect all 3 water towers. Mr. Clausen.
The dates are a little fuzzy because of COVID, but we had a sanitary inspection done by Eagle and our district engineer on our water side. One of the recommendations is to have all the towers inspected. Their recommendation is 10 to 15 years for tower painting. I'll be here 11 years in September, and we haven't painted a tower yet. So the one at the DPW and the one out on Quick Road need to be inspected. We've gotten great longevity out of them. We don't see any outward problems, but the Eagle recommends that we have these inspected on a 5-year basis, emptied and inspected on the inside because there is inner coatings on those. There's valves in there for discharge, screens to keep bugs, birds, that kind of stuff out. So they want that done by an independent engineer. Dixon is pretty much the specialty engineering company in Michigan that does that. They're also the engineer we use to do the inspections on the DPW tower for the cellular antennas that we have up there when they do modifications there. So they gave us a quote that was a little bit dated, so when I talked to him, he said it shouldn't exceed the $15,000, and that's to do all 3 towers. So we'll probably end up taking Quick Road and DPW out of service for a limited amount of time so they can do the interior inspection and then the exterior inspection, and then they'll bring set for recommendations and also put us in compliance with Eagle.
So you do them one at a time?
Yes. Yeah, we can't take both of those out of service.
That didn't sound very good.
No.
That was my question. Thank
Yes.
you, Mr. Kinnaman.
Is our 3rd tower operational?
Yes.
Oh.
But it's only 80,000 gallons, so that would be drained quickly if we ever had a large fire or major water break. So that's why both the DPW and Quick Road Tower were put into service, and those are about 800,000 gallons between the 2 of those. So.
Any further comments or questions for Mr. Clausen?
Yeah, Mr. Clausen, you touched on it a little bit, but if you could expand, just out of curiosity, you talked about bugs, birds, that sort of thing. What sort of things would Dixon Engineering be inspecting for in those towers?
Well, there's screens and there's vents in them, so all those vents are protected so bugs and birds or animals can't get inside. So they make sure that those screens and coatings and access are all working properly so that those things can't happen. And then they make recommendations for improvements or changes in them. And then regulations have changed for the type of screening that we need. So we'll have to bring those up to date also.
But they do a full inspection. They
Yes.
check for coatings, they check for
Yeah, they have.
operational everything.
Yeah, the last time we had it done, I ended up getting about a 10 or 12 page report on each tower. So.
Okay.
Any further questions or comments for Mr. Clausen? The recommendation of the staff is to retain Dixon Engineering to conduct the inspections of all 3 water towers in the amount not to exceed $15,000. A motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Kinnaman, support by Perkins. Any further discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Weinbrenner.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. Item number 3 under new business, consideration. Thank you, Brian. Consideration of the approval of ordinance number 467, amending chapter Roman numeral 9 of the village ordinances of concerning the keeping of horses within the village. Mr. Kinnaman, are you going to lead the discussion, or is Mr. Walker?
So since Mr. Kinnaman was the chair of that specific committee, I would defer to him.
Thank you. This was brought to us because of an interest in a rural part of the village by a homeowner that would like to put horses on a property that is in excess of 5 acres. And as a committee, we reviewed
a recommendation that came to us from our planner, and then we did look at a few modifications to that, and came up with what you do see here. There was one thing that I didn't notice in here that we had talked about, and since this has been out in the public, I have had enough conversation with some people that I would like to offer a couple of word changes in here that I think might tighten up a few of our concerns from our citizens. So
Lead on.
Okay, it's mostly in item D2 that talks about the 2-acre property limit or minimum. And the way this is written is that you could own 2 properties neighboring each other that combined makes up the 2 acres. And that would allow you to then have an animal, a horse, on your property. And looking at some of our older area of the community, some of those are larger properties. You get into some parts of Park Avenue, there are some properties there that go all the way from Park to the school properties that could just about fit this. And so, especially if they were to acquire a neighboring property. Now you've got 2 properties that are owned by one individual that suddenly fits this, this guideline. And so what I would like to recommend as a amendment to this prior to a vote is to change that to 2 acres for any one property. And then
That's just limited for horses?
and just limited for horses, and to add per horse, so that if they have a second horse, they have to have 4 acres of land then. So that does change where that could happen, because our real intent is not to say, you know, the middle of town can start having lots of farm animals in it,
We
you know.
want farm animals.
We're not going back to the 1800s, where, as we've talked about several things today, we're progressing in a new direction. And so to allow some of this, we have larger properties out Maple Street, East Holly Road. We have where this property owner is located is back in the LeGrand area, and there are some larger, what you would consider rural properties that are within the village limits. And that is more where we are feeling, and I think our intent was, as a committee even, was to help keep us a little bit more along those guidelines as opposed to animals like that in what we would consider center city.
In close
kind of
proximity to
stuff.
neighbors.
In close proximity to a lot of neighbors, yes. So that would be I would make well, let's have discussion, I suppose.
Yeah.
and then
Let's have discussion.
Make a motion.
Yeah, we've had a presentation by Mr. Kinnaman. What are council's thoughts?
Well, according to our general regulations, 90-03, farm animals prohibited. No person shall own, keep, harbor, have custody, or raise any cattle, cows, horses, sheep, swine, except for Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs, goats, or other livestock in the village, not zoned for agricultural land uses. We're making an exception here for horses. I myself have, I don't know if you all know, I have a pretty sizable piece of property. I would love to raise goats and sheep. I'm right on Elm and Saginaw. Well, I'm one removed from Saginaw. So we're making an exception for horses. is there any allowance in the future for other changes? That's my question.
I would say
I
that.
currently have rabbits.
I would say
chickens,
that the
ducks.
tightening up that I am recommending
I know, that's why
would
I'm-
make it even more difficult in your scenario because your larger property is actually more than one property.
Right, I've kept
And
everything as
so,
separate individual lots.
in order to make that change, you would have to actually make a zoning request or a property merging request.
Well, with the help of Mr. McKinney, my property did increase.
I did, as the attorney for an estate, sell you a 35-foot lot, right?
Two of them.
Two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that it gets up to 2 acres though that quickly, so.
I got 4 more behind.
4
I'm
more
w-
lots?
Mr.
Not sure
President,
it's,
I'm I'm wondering what you know. How do I say this? What's the difference, right? If you have a property owner who has 2 parcels of property that are contiguous, that together equal that 2 acres, why can't they have a horse on it? What is the concern?
That's my question too.
I mean, isn't, you know,
Well, multiple
do
properties,
horses
first
recognize
of all,
parcels?
are. Pardon me?
Do horses recognize one parcel from another?
No, but we would recognize that difference as to, say you take a property, in Mr. Perkins' situation, he currently only has, I believe, 1 home on each of those.
1 home and the additional lots. So it's just 1 home.
Right, 1 home, but each of those lots could have a home.
Correct.
So if you say you buy your neighbor's lot as well that has a home on it, now you have 2 lots next to each other that each have homes on them. And then you can start to say, now I'm just going to start fencing things off. That's where I'm saying, let's make it that it needs to be 1 continuous piece of property, which was some of the discussion we had in the meeting, and we were leaned in another direction. And the more I've talked with people out in the community, that becomes one of the concerns, is that you can just start acquiring properties. Now, can you still come and have those properties merged? You could, as long as there's not still a second residence.
Several thoughts come to mind, and then I'm going to ask for some comments from the staff and Mr. Gildner. When you do a split combination and several parcels become 1 parcel, you suddenly have to comply with the regulations for a larger parcel. So it's a more regulated in terms of what you can do on that property. So that's one difference if you have it combined. But there are two things going on here. One is the intensity of the use in a neighborhood, if you will, versus the intensity of a use on acreage, what I'll call acreage. So that's the consideration I think you were considering at the council.
Right.
And then I also have a concern about changing language in a committee meeting. And I know we have Michael and Mr. Walker have some thoughts also, I think. Mr. Gildner?
Well, I was asked to, it's been a while since I prepared this, but
Right.
I was asked to tackle it by Mr. Walker. All the logic or the rationale behind it, I wasn't privy to, but I was asked to try to accomplish this. So in terms of the comments made here tonight, those changes could be made. I don't know what form they would take. I'd have to sit down and wordsmith it a little bit, but I'm confident it could take place. Inasmuch as, which committee did this come from? It didn't come from the planning commission?
Came from ordinance.
Yeah, so I don't see an issue in terms of that, making the changes here tonight from the committee, but I wouldn't be able to wordsmith it on the fly. Nor
Right.
would
so we could make a motion for recommendation or for modifications and then bring back, maybe for next month, here a finished,
Yes, I feel more comfortable with.
right.
Can't we just postpone this and refer it to,
And I don't mind if we
Staff.
need to refer it back to the committee.
you know?
You know, if we refer it back to our committee and we work on it again, that's fine with me too. If you think that that is a,
Because I personally, I think it's a great idea that we are willing to make the changes to allow, to accommodate. But, you know,
right, I
you're
think
broadening it, but then you're trying to restrict it.
I think we're in the protocol phase here of who makes those,
Well, I think Mr. Gildner is willing to work with you again.
right.
Mike, and Richard, can we just have it come back to the council next month?
And that's fine with me.
It's absolutely fine.
Yeah. You gotta
So
recommend-
we table it for
But-
today,
Well, we postpone
Well-
it. yeah.
postpone it.
Mr. Walker,
Do we need to make a motion on recommending the word change and then he brings back a final version?
So if you're gonna talk about word change, one comment that I made to Mr. Gilner that the president picked up on was, I wonder if what Councilman Kinnaman is trying to accomplish couldn't be accomplished just through changing some verbiage, but rather than forcing a person to combine the individual acts, say Mr. Perkins, for example, if he has 6, saying before you can do this, you have to have 6, or you have to combine all 6, which comes at considerable cost. Maybe there's some verbiage that could be put in there that said you must have contiguous properties, but only one primary residence
Right.
for those properties. And so in this particular case, the person who originally brought this up, even though it is not just for this one person, it's for anybody who's eligible, but this particular applicant that brought this up actually has 4 individual parcels.
Right.
One primary residence. And so when I think of a model, I think that's a perfect model, because it's over 5 acres of property, one principal resident. And so if there ever was a case to where they built or sold one of their lots, or 2 of their lots, and dropped down below that standard,
Then their circumstances
then,
change.
yeah, they would no longer be eligible to do that. So I just, if, whatever council decides, I'm sure Mr. Gilner can wordsmith as he said, but I just think about that for a moment, that maybe it's one primary residence on those properties owned by the same person.
I agree.
one principal residence.
I agree.
Well, I think you want to make a motion to have Mr. Gildner look at this?
Sure. I'm not sure how we're wording the motion, but maybe I would make a motion to refer this back to legal counsel for modification of item 2, to take into consideration, well, I don't know, I think we have to actually discuss whether we want, whether we think we want to go with one property or if we can go with one principal residence. That's what I want to be sure of before.
Well, it would be one property with a principal residence.
With a principal
Yeah.
residence.
With a single principal residence, right?
Correct.
I'm not gonna write it for you, Mr. Gildner, but.
No, and I understand where you're going with that. I don't need it that specific, quite honestly. I mean, I've taken some notes here, and as I sit down with it, I may have some follow-up questions. I can call Mr. Walker, who may refer me to you, but, you know, I think we can come up with it.
And then,
Just give him the ball.
okay, and then there should be something about
Jimmy Chitwood.
per horse, that is a per horse, not,
That is one of my notes.
Okay.
That, I know.
okay? So, per discussion, I would refer this, make a motion to refer this to legal counsel for modifications to bring back to a subsequent meeting.
I second.
Motion by Kinnaman, support by Perkins. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Weinbrenner.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
McHenry.
Yes, motion carried. Item 4 under new business, consideration of the approval of resolution 2021-035 approving the new master plan for Village of Holly. Mr. Kinnaman or Mr. Walker?
Before you, you have the master plan. It is a result of many, many hours, months, years.
2 years.
2 years of the planning commission working alongside with guidance from our planner from Rural Professional Services. The master plan is required to be updated and reviewed on a regular basis, and so that's what you have before you. As part of the process, there were public hearings, there were open houses, there was opportunity for public input and comment on the plan, both at the meetings, the regular planning commission meetings, as well as the special meetings that were held. So the master plan before you is set legally, all the requirements have been met, and all that's required for adoption is for council to authorize resolution 2021-035.
Okay, I'd make a motion of consideration of approval.
We have some discussion to go.
Okay.
We can do that after the motion, too.
Okay.
There's a motion, go ahead, Mr.
I was here.
It's this sentence right here.
Oh. Considering the recommendation of planning commission to approve resolution 2021-035 and thereby adopting a new master plan for the Village of Holly.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a support. Motion by Powers, support by Kinnaman. Any discussion?
Yes, I have, as I asked Mr. Kinnaman prior to the meeting. Our neighborhood office commercial area is represented as a very small location. Is that broadened on, when I first purchased, I believe Saginaw on both sides of the street was NOC rated. And it's not depicted here. And the only NOC rating is my property. I mean, this.
Well, let's back up. That's the future land use plan?
Nope, this is the built-out analysis. I've read through this a couple of times, and I just wondered did I overlook it? I mean,
Okay, built-out analysis is a review of existing items or existing properties.
Right.
And so, from what the planner was able to determine, your properties are apparently the only actual
buildable
NOC listed properties as, I don't know, maybe buildable, yes. If you go to the actual map, future land use map on page 71, the terms have been modified. They fit
Okay.
a more standardized throughout the region or state, and it's termed now neighborhood commercial.
Okay, so it does
Which
extend-
now
it
you
extends
notice
further up Saginaw.
is the entire section.
But that's a future land use map. That's not the
Correct.
result of any ordinance.
Correct.
This is a resolution, it's not an ordinance, right? And a future land use map is what some disparagingly call a blob map. It's not the law, and you can pass a zoning ordinance that's inconsistent with the future land use map. Right?
You came an interesting point to go right along with Councilman Perkins' question. At the next planning commission meeting, there is a request from a property owner along North Saginaw to change zoning to this neighborhood office commercial zoning, which really is the.
You've spoken to the same person I have then.
Well, possibly. I'm not sure who you spoke to, but I mean, I think your comments are right on, and that's where it's headed. But as Councilman Kinnaman said, you know, that is the future desire, but as the president said, it's not.
Well, it's just a map, it's a direction, but it's not, no one's adopted an ordinance that says this is fixed in time and space, it can't be anything other than what it is on this future plan, which is useful, but not
concrete.
not concrete. Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really my only question. I read through it all, and I think it was put together very well. It's just when
Represents a lot of work.
I remember at Jerry's office, there used to be a map
A lot of work.
that had the NOC area, which is not represented in here.
It is, well, but even that map, I do remember a map being there that reflected some of that, but that probably was a future land use map before the terminology was changed. It still wasn't the ordinance for that area, but I think you can see those changes coming, and I think this next
I'd like to see them.
request, I think this next request in front of the planning commission, if it's approved, may spark a little more interest in some of the property owners in that area.
Any further council comments? Any public comment
I would say,
on this issue?
I would say instead of worrying about future things with Holly, let's fix what's wrong with Holly now and not worry about all this stuff and this future zoning stuff because I've looked on maps, the zoning of Holly, and airport is supposed to be only single family dwellings. Why is my neighbor a duplex?
It's a single family dwelling.
There's it's basically a park, it's 4 townhouses together.
Yeah, it's required by the planning law that we have a master plan that we update it.
And then across the street, I got 2 separate sets of those.
So it's required by law that we do this.
No, but it's single family dwelling, no multiple
Well,
family dwelling.
You asked us why we were worrying about the future because
I'm
we're
just
told
saying.
to.
Well,
What I'm saying
you gotta
is
have a
that,
plan
you
for the
know,
future.
Right.
You have to have a destination.
Any further comments, sir? All right, thank you.
I'll make the motion that we consider.
Well, we have a motion.
We have a
It's already
motion,
been made.
and you
Right.
seconded
And
it.
If there's council, any further discussion?
You got me, Richard.
Roll call vote, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
Weinbrenner,
Yes.
Delaney,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Item number 5 on new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to approve the professional services contract for the village manager. Mr. Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My professional services contract is due to expire within the next year, and so as common practice, it's normal to seek extension, either by myself or council. At this time, I presented a professional services contract for myself that would continue through December 31st of 2024. And the contract is virtually the same as the prior contract with the exception of updated language and dates and with the following additions. I am requesting 1 additional week vacation. Upon retirement, the presentation of my duty weapons and retirement credentials. As you know, I am not only a retired police officer, but I am a sworn in police officer of the village of Holly and function as so. It is common practice in many police departments for duty weapons and retirement credentials to be presented upon retirement. And so I place that in the contract, and then I am asking that you amend the severance pay provision of the contract from a minimum of 6 months to whatever months are left on the contract, to a minimum of 6 months. So just those 3 changes.
What's the pleasure of council?
We're just busting your chops a little bit, Jerry.
We're just busting the job here for Dutch. I just told him, I said, I didn't get my duty weapon when I retired.
Those who do not ask.
Do not
Oh, I
receive.
asked. Oh, I asked.
Yeah, I say we accept,
Motion to approve the professional services contract.
yep, motion to approve professional service contract for the village manager extension.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Perkins, support by, I think Powers was first by
Here in a second.
Yeah, like those Olympic races. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Weinbrenner,
Yes.
Delaney,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Item 6 under new business, consideration of the approval of action request to approve the professional services contract for the village clerk treasurer, Ms. Bigger.
Thank you, Mr. President. My contract is about the same. Again, I did not ask for any compensation other than an additional week's vacation. The same severance that Mr. Walker asked for, and I didn't ask for a duty. I don't got one. He wants to give me an adding machine. So,
I once again will make that motion to accept the professional services contract for Ms. Bigger, clerk, or the clerk treasurer extension.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Perkins, support by Weinbrenner. Any questions or discussion?
We can't separate these by about 6 months? Because that's, if you notice, December 31st of 2024.
he says I have to stay till the next budget is done, but we're still arguing about it. I'll let you know who wins. But he wants me to stay till June of the following year, just to get the budget done for that year.
That makes sense. I hope he wins.
Great.
Roll call vote, please.
Delaney,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Weinbrenner,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Reports, Mr. Walker.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of items real briefly. I see Ms. Watt just left, but she had mentioned during her public comments regarding the status of the RRC, the redevelopment ready community. And in fact, DDA Director Klump and Code Enforcement Building Inspector Jeremy Watson have made great strides with it, and we are in the final stages of approval to become a RRC certified community.
Good.
And that is a huge accomplishment that will not only open the village up to be eligible for additional funding opportunities, it is also an attractive element to entice developers to come to the village, to invest money in the area. And so we're very happy with that. I see Ms. Rankin left also, but I mentioned yesterday in the DDA meeting that she has taken the lead as a civilian volunteer to work on certified local government. And that's another certification very similar to RRC, goes off in a little different area, but it all talks about the same thing. It talks about community involvement, it talks about transparency, it talks about standards for website development. It talks about RRC and CLG, talks about having the village up to date, and not that we're not, but this just tightens everything up and make sure that it stays that way in the future. So we are in good hands with Director Klump, Jeremy Watson, and again, the group that Ms. Rankin is working with. And so we're making great strides there, but we're pretty happy with that. Another question was asked perhaps by Jacob. And so Jacob had a question regarding American Rescue Funds and, you know, how they could be, he was talking about future money also. But in past meetings, there's been questions about American Rescue Funds and what is the exact amount the village is getting, where is the village at in that process. And so I think we reported previously that our amount that we've been told that has been allocated for the village of Holly is just over $640,000. And so we do not have that money in the bank. We have made application for that money. We have done everything to this point that has been requested and is required of us to do. But we do not have that money. We have not been told when we're going to receive that money. As soon as we get notice of a date when we will receive that money, we will certainly inform council and the public as well, because we want input. I mean, as Jacob said, this $640,000, it's not going to change the life of the village. You know, we spent a considerable amount of money during the COVID period on public safety and public works needs while we're meeting the needs of the residents and the business owners in the village. And so some of that money will go back to reimburse that. Some of the money will be used for water and sewer infrastructure needs. But if you're talking, and I'll just get a number, pull a number out, don't hold me to it. But if you're talking $300,000 or $400,000 for water and sewer infrastructure needs, just remember, the road construction along North Saginaw is 7/10 of a mile.
Yeah.
And the water, not even the sewer, just the water and the, some stormwater upgrades, not a complete new system, just upgrades in that area, we're just at $1 million for 7/10 of a mile. That entire project along North Saginaw is about $2.2 million total. We are very fortunate that the village sought and received federal funding through Channel 2 MDOT to the tune of about $750,000 to offset our costs. So we know that this first $642,000 roughly is not going to go a long way, but certainly it's appreciated. When we get the next notification, as Jacob said, once we find out what new allocations were made federally, then we will be able to begin that process, and hopefully it'll be a much larger pot of money, and that we will be able to do some impactful things in the village. But that's where we're at with that. And the very last thing that I'll mention is Mr. Feeney asked or commented about the cannabis discussion that we had tonight. And so really, just so everybody knows, I mean, the reason Mr. Damascus was here tonight was because he reached out to the village and the township, but we're talking about the village tonight. He reached out to the village and said, you know what, we want to talk about cannabis in the village of Holly. There's been some substantial changes since the laws were originally passed, and council talked about those changes. When the laws were originally passed, there were not even rules or regulations written at the state level for anybody to administer it. So as Mr. Perkins referenced, I think it was a very wise move that council deferred at that time and said, we're just going to wait until we get some more clarity on the issue here. And so I think we're at a time now where there is clarity and where I think educated decisions can be made. And so that's why we're here. So Mr. Damascus's group met with staff previously, and we've had several conversations with him. We've also had conversations with a couple of other consultants unassociated with Mr. Damascus about the very same topic. And so that's how this discussion came to the public. That's how this discussion came to the council. Really, the council is legislative in nature. I mean, I don't need to tell them what their function is, but not everybody knows. The council is legislative in nature. It is staff's responsibility when we have issues that come to our forefront to bring them to council for consideration. So the way that this got here tonight is exactly, in my opinion, how it's supposed to work.
I asked for it to be brought here. It was going to be brought here in July. I missed that meeting. I knew he wouldn't be here, so I asked that it be brought this month.
For sure.
And I wanted it to be a discussion in public about this. So the suggestion that it was somehow sub rosa or under cover of darkness is completely contrary to what our intent was.
No, yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to everybody know that's how it got here. Now, for council, I think our next logical step is to make it an actual agenda item. And I would like to do that in the September meeting, unless council tells me no. And then once you have it as an agenda item, council can discuss it as a whole, and then do whatever you wish to do. Send it off to committee, discuss it as a whole with the council. It's really your choice. You have a couple of different avenues you can embark on, but I think that at this point, that's the right thing to do.
And what's done will have to be done in a public meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In an open council.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the end of my report. I just wanted to make sure that I covered that particular area because, as I said, unless you tell me not to, which I don't see that. I mean, I think council wants to discuss this openly. I mean, I don't think anybody's committed to what they're going to decide. But I mean, I think a good, open, public discussion is warranted on this matter, so you'll see it on the September agenda
Okay.
unless you ask me not to. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Gildner.
Well, I just would update council. I don't know what you tend to see me at these meetings and some of the work that comes before you. You may not know about what we do for the village report. And the last month at least has been very busy for me with some of those court cases. There's three in particular. There's the incident at the school with Mr. Matthew Roche. That is something that we're handling. That's in court as we speak. There's the property, Mr. Stocky's property, and forgive me, I don't know the address.
400 Elm.
400 Elm. Also handling that as well. And then we filed within the last month a lawsuit against a man named Mr. Mash, who was doing some tree clearing on some property. And the concern was that he was in violation of village ordinances. So, been very busy with those three cases. I'm happy to answer any particular questions you may have about them, but again, because those happen outside of a village council meeting, you may simply not know we're involved in them. So, that's really all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gildner. Clerk Treasurer Bigger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank all of you for approving the contract extension. It's nice to know you have faith in me. And also, I left some meeting calendars on the table in the hallway. If anybody needs any, it's the calendars for 21-22 fiscal year. So help yourself if you would like a meeting calendar. It lists all of the village, not only village council, but all of the board and commission dates. That is all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Bigger. Board and commission updates and council comments. We'll begin with Ryan Shield.
Oh, sporting a new look. Look at that.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Thank you, Mr. President and Council. I have nothing to report for Haya. And welcome back, Mr. Walker and Ms. Bigger. I look forward to competing with you again with the outfits.
I'm sure I can keep up.
And thanks again, Mr. President and Council.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shield. Mr. Kinnaman.
You've had what had been with planning for a while, and our past meeting, all we had was the RRC presentation and basically a decision to go ahead and work with that. And there are apparently some items coming up in our next meeting, so I'm anxious to see our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Kinnaman. Mr. Powers.
By way of parks, we are going to have the Pins for Parks on September 10th, honoring Nicole and Chris Rankin for their contributions to the community, in particular to the parks. Hope all of you can make it. I hope I don't have to cancel it again. And this is an event that we really talked about whether we should just wait on it, but I think it's important enough for our community to get them out to the bowling alleys, this sort of thing. It is opening up a lot more, and if we can encourage this, I think that's even better for the community. So September 10th, mark it on your calendar, and it will be Pins for Parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Mr. Delaney.
The Zoning Board of Appeals met on Monday, August 2nd. There's only one item on the agenda. The ZBA unanimously approved moving the billboard located near the parking lot off Broad Street from the north side of the lot to the south side of the lot in order to accommodate the removal of the depot. We'd just like to say thank you very much, Mr. Walker, for an update on ARPA funds. And I think there's a lot of good conversation to be had about the hopefully coming infrastructure bill in Congress. I would request, particularly with that second part, the infrastructure bill, that we think about finding some way of getting community input as to how those funds are spent, because I think that really helps us as council make informed decisions as to that. Regarding the DDA appointment, was raised in a number of public comments. I certainly don't want to rehash all of that, but I would say to my fellow council members that I really think we're overcomplicating the situation. Mr. Rizal does not qualify for the position per our charter and the DDA bylaws. And we have had a number of qualified candidates, people who are respected in our community, responsible people, suggested for that role. And I would respectfully ask President McKenney to nominate Linda Stouffer for that role. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Mr. Weinbrenner.
First of all, I'd like to say welcome Mr. Walker and Mrs. Baker back to with us with the council again. You're welcome. This is for Chief Nars. I know you're doing your job well, Chief, but I have to the two persons from the one person from 108 and the other one from 309 Cockshell Street tonight, the racing and the drag racing and that there. Being a police officer and been in that area before and stuff, and it probably is going on again. We used to, on Coggeshall Street there, they used to fly over the rail tracks to see how far they could land.
Hump jump.
And they've done that many times. In the airport, they fly right through that stop sign, speeding, but just to let you know.
Yeah, and if I may, if you follow the reports, we have increased post-COVID release. There seems to have been, and many people in this room have called me, where it's like, it's insane with the amount of people speeding and running stop signs, because everyone collectively at the same time. And there was a moment where I think I had about 16 phone calls in about a 3-day period. They were all different streets, and I thought, there's something. Brian's not here. There was something in the water. Because everybody's speeding and running stop signs. So what we started doing was literally taking the largest complaints first. And if you notice, our speed card is out there. It is followed by enforcement. So we put the card out there as a traffic calming measure and to educate everybody as to what the speeds are and to slow down. Then we follow that up with enforcement. I think we've had about a 300% increase in the last 2 months in traffic stops and violations and citations written. That trend is going up. So if anybody in this room gets a ticket, please don't call me.
Don't call Buster.
You will see us, and you will see us there. And ironically,
Don't call me neither.
all those phone calls, I did not get these two. So I was hoping to apologize to these two gentlemen tonight, give them a card to say, call me, because I think these are the only two guys in Holly that didn't call me. So we most certainly will redirect to those areas and make, as they say, a splash.
Okay, thank you.
I can assure you.
Any further, Mr. Weinbrenner?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perkins?
No, HTC did not meet this month, so I really have nothing. Just thanks everybody for coming out.
Okay, I have no comments. If there's no objection, we're adjourned.
Good.
By the way, you already paid for your TV.
I did?
Yeah, I paid.